You haven't subscribed to the channel yet? Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. A sunburned betrayal. Emma and Tom were that couple everyone admired. College sweethearts turned suburban parents. They were the poster pair of family bliss. 2 kids, a dog, and a home tucked into a quiet street in Indianapolis. But when they were invited by their old college friends, Carlos and Sofia, to spend spring break at their seaside villa in Spain, they knew it was the perfect chance to shake off the daily grind. When they arrived, the Spanish villa took their breath away. The ocean was so close they could hear the gentle crash of waves from their bedroom, and the fresh, citrus-scented breeze that floated through the open windows made their usual Midwest scenery seem miles away. From the moment they stepped off the plane, Emma was in awe. The town was idyllic, the locals greeted them warmly, and every view seemed like it had been curated by nature itself. Carlos and Sofia, who had been living here for 5 years, were quick to show off the town's charm and laid-back lifestyle. Tom, as usual, was practical about the whole thing. "It's beautiful, sure," he said while sipping his morning coffee on the villa's sun-drenched balcony. "But we've got real life to get back to. Kids need school, and we can't exactly run everything remotely." Emma rolled her eyes, smirking. "Tom, it wouldn't hurt you to dream a little." But as the days passed, she grew more enchanted with the place. She marveled at how relaxed Carlos and Sofia seemed, the way they sipped wine in the afternoon on their terrace, or how they could take a sunset stroll anytime they liked. The town even had a charmingly bizarre tradition called the Festival of the Shells, which, from what Carlos said, seemed to involve a lot of sangria and people dressed in elaborate shell costumes parading down the cobbled streets. Emma's fascination was both charming and exasperating to Tom, who found himself politely nodding while she babbled on about living by the sea, hosting open-air dinners with the sound of the ocean as background music, and spending evenings sketching on the sand like Sofia did. On their 3rd day, after a long morning of hiking along a cliffside path, Tom was exhausted. The Spanish sun had taken it out of him, and he excused himself to head back to the villa for a nap. Emma stayed behind with Carlos, who, sensing her interest in the festival, suggested they go into town to check it out. Emma's eyes sparkled, and she accepted without hesitation. A few hours later, Tom awoke, still groggy but refreshed, and noticed Emma hadn't returned. Glancing at his phone, he realized it was past 10 p.m. He sent a quick text, but got no response. Trying to stay calm, he figured she and Carlos had just lost track of time. But as the hours ticked on and she still didn't return, his calm faded into irritation, and then worry. Just after midnight, Tom heard the front door creak open. He slipped into the hallway and saw Emma, cheeks flushed and a bit unsteady, laughing in a hushed voice as she walked in with Carlos. She froze when she saw Tom, her laughter cut short. "Where have you been?" Tom's voice was cold. Emma shrugged, a little too nonchalantly. "Carlos showed me around town, and then we went to the Festival of the Shells. You should have seen it, Tom. It was amazing." "Yeah, and you didn't think to check your phone? Maybe let your husband know where you are." Emma's expression turned from excitement to impatience. "Come on, Tom, it's not a big deal. It's a small town. We were just out having fun." Carlos, looking increasingly uncomfortable, muttered something about needing to go check on Sofia and quickly slipped away. "So this is what we're doing now?" Tom pressed on, his voice tightening. "You ditched me to go out with another man, and now you're coming back at midnight like we're all college kids again." Emma rolled her eyes. "Honestly, Tom, you're overreacting. I just wanted a little adventure." "A little adventure?" Tom's voice grew louder, unable to believe what he was hearing. "Emma, you're a grown woman with a family back home. What kind of adventure are you chasing?" She stared back defiantly, arms crossed. "I'm not chasing anything. I'm just tired of the same routine every day. Carlos and Sofia are living the life we only talk about, and I wanted to experience it, at least for a day." For a moment, Tom just looked at her, a mixture of anger and hurt crossing his face. "So to do that, you thought running off with Carlos was a good idea?" Emma didn't answer. Instead, she simply walked past him and went into the bedroom, shutting the door behind her. The following days were an uncomfortable blur. Tom could hardly look at Carlos without wanting to throw him off a cliff, and Emma barely spoke to him, acting as though nothing had happened. The tension was thick, and even Sophia picked up on it, trying to smooth things over with extra rounds of tapas and wine, but nothing seemed to help. When their time in Spain came to an end, Tom was more than ready to go home. The flight was silent. Emma occupied herself with a book, while Tom stared out the window, fuming. He'd given her time to explain herself, to apologize, but she hadn't shown the slightest remorse. As they touched down back in the U.S., Tom knew one thing for certain. He couldn't live with someone who treated their marriage so carelessly. The aftermath. Back home, the distance between them only grew. Emma carried on as though nothing had happened, busying herself with work, the kids, and house chores. Tom, meanwhile, became increasingly distant, spending long hours at the office or at the gym, trying to channel his frustration somewhere, anywhere that didn't involve yelling at his wife. One evening, after a tense family dinner, Tom finally snapped. The kids were tucked into bed, and Emma was cleaning up the dishes. He walked into the kitchen, watching her in silence for a moment before he spoke. "We need to talk, Emma." She didn't even look up. "About what?" "About Spain. About you disappearing with Carlos for half the night, and not even having the decency to apologize." She sighed, putting down a plate and finally looking at him. "Tom, it was nothing. You're blowing this way out of proportion." "Am I?" Tom felt his anger rising again, because it felt a lot like betrayal. "Emma, you spent the whole vacation talking about how wonderful Carlos' life was, how much you wished we could live like that. And then you go off with him in the middle of the night." Emma's face turned defiant. "I told you I wanted to see what it was like, to actually live a little." He stared at her, stunned. "So that's it? You're just done with our life?" "Maybe I am," she said, her voice softening, almost contemplative. "Maybe I need something more than what we have here." Tom felt a strange numbness wash over him. "Emma, if that's how you feel, then maybe we're already finished." She looked at him, almost challenging. "Maybe we are." The decision. In the days that followed, Tom thought long and hard about what to do. He loved his children and had spent nearly a decade building a life with Emma, but he couldn't shake the betrayal he felt in Spain. It wasn't even about what had or hadn't happened between her and Carlos. It was about the lack of respect, the disregard for their life together. Emma had shown him a side of herself he didn't know existed, and he couldn't live with it. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, he found Emma in the living room, flipping through a travel magazine. He sat down across from her. "I'm filing for divorce, Emma." She looked up, a hint of surprise flashing across her face. But then she simply nodded, as if she'd expected it all along. "If that's what you want," she replied, her voice calm. Tom felt his heart break a little. This wasn't the reaction he'd wanted. He'd hoped for some kind of fight, some indication that their marriage had meant something to her. But instead, she looked almost relieved. Epilogue. In the months that followed, they navigated the painful process of separation. Emma showed little emotion, almost as if she'd already moved on mentally. When the divorce was finalized, she booked a one-way ticket back to Spain, where Tom heard through the grapevine. She rented a small flat near Carlos and Sophia. Tom took on the role of single father, pouring his energy into his kids, work, and rebuilding a life without Emma. He sometimes wondered if he'd misinterpreted her indifference or if she'd ever really cared about their life together. One day, while sorting through a box of old photos, he came across a picture of their family at a beach years before. Emma laughing with the kids, Tom's arm wrapped protectively around her. It was a bittersweet reminder of a time when things were simpler, when he believed in forever. But in the end, he knew he'd made the right choice. Betrayal wasn't always about what happened. It was often about what didn't.